Hey, all you heroes, hawks, heralds, crows, pirates, and wardens. Welcome to the Dragon Age Lorecast, where we unpack, discuss, and galaxy brain about all the lore behind the Dragon Age series.
We are so excited to bring you this podcast. Every episode, we'll be talking about a different topic in the Dragon Age universe. From character deep dives to exalted marches and elven gods, we will cover it all.
There will be spoilers. And always remember, swooping is bad.
Hello and welcome to the Dragon Age Lorecast, where we talk about all things Dragon Age. I am one of your hosts, Austin, or Teacup.
And I'm Shelby, or She-Cup.
Yeah, and we are here with another character deep dive. And so we are about to round it out. And, we've spent a lot of time talking about creatures, and last week we talked about Hala, so I think it is pretty fitting that this week's character is who it is. So who are we talking about, Shelby?
Yeah, so this week we're talking about Merrill. I did feel like we needed to cover an elf right after we talk about Hala, and there's not a lot of elf companions in Dragon Age, so Merrill it is. She's pretty much the only one there is.
BioWare, give us Charter.
Or just like another new elfie elf. Like, I'd be cool with that too.
That's true. I think this is off topic a little bit, but I'll bring it up. I do think that in a lot of preparation for Dreadwolf, we need to be okay with some of the more minor NPCs from Inquisition maybe not being being in it for other characters, new characters to be present.
Yeah, I agree. I think by the time you have made 3 games and you're moving on to the 4th, I do feel like the din of the fandom asking for characters to come back can be a little bit overwhelming and sometimes can be an echo chamber. And so I do agree with you. I would rather have new characters and no returning NPCs than have all returning NPCs. And I know it doesn't have to be such an all or nothing, characterization like that. However, I do feel like it's better to have the universe be expanded than just limited to what we already know.
100%, 100%. And I think that we have to remember as fans, like, we've gotten to live with the Inquisition characters for almost 10 years. And we are very attached to some of the Inquisition characters. And so I think we, just as a fandom, need to remember that there are likely going to be new characters. And we might not get every Inquisition character we want to see in the new game.
True. So are we ready to move into Merrill?
I am.
All right. Well, as we've already established, Merrill is a Dalish elf, but specifically she's from the Sabre clan, and she is a mage as well. And we do know that she's a temporary companion to a Dalish hero of Ferelden, and she is a companion to Hawk in Dragon Age 2. So let's dive into some fun facts. But apparently, this is the first one. Apparently, according to the BioWare social forums, which no longer exist, but there are still archives of them out there. According to the BioWare social forums, Merrill can recite all of the known elven history, and she can navigate the Fade. But she has very little experience with the world or even her own people.
That tracks.
Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes.
I do feel like there's another companion who has very little experience of the world and their own people, but has extensive knowledge about the Fade and elven history.
You have some egg on your face.
Yeah, no, I think that it's very, very similar. And I know a long time ago, I was a little bit on the fence of whether or not Merrill would join Solas or not, but I do feel like after thinking about it for a long time, I feel like Merrill is the number one of all companions who would join Solas.
Yeah, and we'll probably talk about this later in the episode when we get into more things. But I do think it depends on what you choose as Hawk and what happens to her a little bit, but I do tend to agree with you. I guess, and maybe this is something we can talk about later and we think about, but do you think that Merrill, in a lot of ways, is coded as someone on the autism spectrum?
I hadn't thought about it, but I can see the argument for it. I'm not sure if I would be prepared to say yes or no right now, but I do see the argument for that. Have you read that somewhere, or is that something you just have come up with?
It probably does exist somewhere because the Dragon Age fandom is extensive, and there's probably someone who said it. But I was just thinking about it, reading the description from the social forums.
Yeah. Well, another thing that this quote from the social forums reminded me of is that it really kind of implies that she's very book smart, but has absolutely no common sense, which I do think we see in Dragon Age 2.
And also, I just think that like there are a lot of like it's played off as wide-eyed innocence, but there are a lot of scenes with her. Like one time, she's like, "I saw a mugging today. It was very fascinating." Like incorrect, like social kind of behavior.
Yeah, like not reading social cues correctly. Yeah, no, I see that. Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up episode to this and you'll present your argument more clearly. But let's continue with our fun facts. So Mary Kirby, who is a writer for BioWare, she is the one that wrote Merrill. Carver, also my nemesis, has a crush on Merrill. Merrill also repeatedly falls into the Kirkwall Harbor, which I think is hilarious. She also repeatedly gets lost on her way back to her house in Kirkwall. This goes along with her not being very smart, common sense wise thing.
Can we just talk about when she does that? I just picture the scene where Michael Scott comes back from when he fell into the koi pond.
That's it exactly. I totally see that. Only Michael Scott plays it off like Jim. I don't remember exactly how it happens in the office, but I do think Merrill would be like, yeah, I fell. So what?
A fish bit my foot. It was awesome.
Exactly. So, my last two fun facts. Merrill wants to have a pet baby griffin, which she would then name Feathers, of course.
So Merrill needs to be a Grey Warden.
Exactly. And then last, Merrill is currently the youngest known individual to receive magic, and that happened when she was 4 years old.
Wow. 4. That's across all games.
Yes. Currently.
Wow.
It could always change, but yeah, currently she's the youngest.
4 is young. That's very young.
Mm-hmm. Very young.
Though, Shelby, we've been watching DBZ, or we were, and Gohan is 4 at the start of that game or that series.
That's true. That is true. And every time we watch it, I'm like, how is this kid alive?
That's a fair point.
I do feel the same about Merrill sometimes.
Fair. All right. Well, let's get into it.
All right. So when we first meet Merrill, she is the first to the keeper of her clan. Reminder that the first is the person who's going to succeed the keeper in leadership of the clan. So she is in training to become the next keeper. And this will be really important to remember as we go through her story, especially her story in Dragon Age 2. So Merrill, when we meet her, she's with the Sabre clan, but that's not really her clan, at least the clan she was born into. She was born into the Alarion clan, and they wandered throughout Navarra. So originally, Merrill is Elven Navaran of origin, but she was not the first, nor was she the second elven child born with magic to this clan. She was the third. So she was sent to the Sabre clan to be the first to keep her Marathari. And this happened at the Arleth Ven, which is a gathering of all of the Dalish clans. And this is pretty, it's not something that happens all the time, obviously. And Merrill was 4 years old when she was sent to the Sabre clan. So, in truth, she probably considers the Sabre clan to be her family because she probably doesn't remember much before then.
Right. So like this is something I need from BioWare. Like I need, and maybe we did cover it. I need a like occurrence rate of magic in Thedas. Because so the Sabre clan has no mage to be there first. But the Illyrian clan has three. Like
Right.
what is the occurrence rate of magic here in Thedas? BioWare, let me know.
I mean, I do feel like it's somewhat random. And there's been some discrepancy in the lore. Like, this is some clans do this, some clans don't do this. It's kind of confusing. So I do feel like this is something that BioWare hasn't necessarily standardized yet. They may come to later, but it feels very much like, I don't know, it just kind of depends.
Well, it would say that like some things in the lore would suggest that Dayless mages who are not the firstborn Dayless mage or whatever, would like take a point of either going to another clan or leaving. I mean, take Dalish from the Chargers. She is in a mercenary group, and you think about Merrill is Merrill. She's a first in another clan. There's the one from Awakening. Can't remember her name.
Valana.
Alana.
I don't
I don't
know
know
if
what her.
I don't know how many other mages were in her clan. She is doing what she's doing to revenge her sister. So I don't know if that's quite the same as what you're talking about.
Right. So maybe there is just a thing of like, hey, if you're not the firstborn mage child, there's no place for you. But that seems impractical because what if your first dies? Like you should like have a second,
They do have a second. Merrill was the third. So Merrill, as we know, is a blood mage. Now, her obsession, her passion for, we can argue over those two verbs, whatever we want to call it, her obsession with the eluvion has caused her to become a blood mage. And we know that she learned blood magic from a pride demon named Audacity. I'm going to leave it at that for now. We will revisit that fact later in the episode. But I think it's important to name now that Merrill has been a blood mage for a long time, longer than since before she's known Hawk. She's been a blood mage. So that's pretty important to name just first and foremost. Do you have thoughts so far?
If we're going to talk about it later, I'll save them.
Okay. So let's get into Dragon Age Origins. I don't want us to get too on topic of the blood magic. So we'll talk about Origins first. So in Dragon Age Origins, we do get to meet Merrill if you choose to be a Dalish elf. This was my first Origin, the first Origin I ever played. So I knew this from the get-go, but I've seen a lot of people who don't know this. So Merrill is asked by the Keeper to accompany the hero of Ferelden when Tamlin goes missing in the forest. So the story, the origin of this origin is that Tamlin cannot be recovered. He's got some kind of sickness that we later find out is the blight sickness. He's been infected by the blight. Merrill does not also catch this sickness while they're in the forest, but the hero of Ferelden does. And that's kind of the catalyst for having the hero of Ferelden leave their clan and join the Grey Wardens. So that's kind of the story in Origins that we meet Merrill, and she stays as the first to the Sabre clan. So That's Origins. And we know this is a little bit in that mid-break time between Origins and 2, but we do know that the Sabre clan, when the Blight broke out, hurriedly made its way to the Free Marches near Kirkwall. And that's where we meet them in Dragon Age 2. That's where Merrill is, and that's where we'll pick up her story after our mid-break.
Yes, that's right. I stopped you to tell you that I'm an idiot. Whew! Thank the maker you know already. Now I can stop worrying I'll be found out.
Do try to have fun, dear.
You could have been one of the Charters, Blackwall. You've got the stature, the attitude.
And you'd be my boss.
Hey, I'm a great boss. I'm a firm believer in No Pants Fridays.
I'd rather fight for a cause.
Hey, No Pants Fridays is a cause.
All right. Well, welcome to the middle of the show where we talk about all things about the podcast, but not the lore of Dragon Age. So first thing is to thank our patrons. Thank you to all of you, especially our first patrons, Lisa M, Genesis, and Derek B. And a special thank you to Nug King, Lewis H. Thank you so much for your patronage. And we have a new Divine Tier patron, Kit, at the Divine Tier. Thank you so much for your patronage. And so another great way to support us is to leave us ratings or reviews on Apple or Spotify. If you leave us 5 stars or more on Apple with some words, we will read it out on a future episode of the show. We're really trying to reach 50 reviews on Apple. So if you have not reviewed us yet and you want to give us some 5 stars, we'd really appreciate if you went over there and supported us there. Also, I would like to remind you to join our Discord, and you can hang out with us there on the Cups Podcasting and More Discord. You can find that link in the episode description. We have lots of fun there talking about all kinds of things. Come and hang out with us. It's an awesome place on the internet. That is also where you can submit your heroes, hawks, and heralds to us to share us your PCs, your original characters from the games. And we do have one to read from our Discord today.
We do, and this one is from the Wesbotron. And this one's kind of long, so I am going to summarize it a little bit, if that's okay. So this is Wesbo's Inquisitor. And this is what he says. So James P. Inquisitor was just some schmuck who needed a little money to stay afloat. So he took a job as some important lady's bodyguard. Little did he know that something was about to rock his world. He then woke up in chains to one of the most beautiful people he's ever seen, who he soon found out was Cassandra Pendergast. James vowed to help seal the rift because there was nothing else to do at the time, and, well, now he had some new magical power, which did feel familiar to him. Together, everyone helped seal the rift temporarily, and we all vowed to close it for good. Back at camp, he meets the gang and takes interest in Cullen and Varric. Cullen talks about how he used to be in the Templar Order, and James figures that his Templar experience will help with demons. Varric also intrigues him because his name is familiar, and then he finds out he's some big author or whatever. James starts to put the moves on Cass, which she brushes off, but he did notice that she blushed for a brief moment. The crew heads to Orlais to clear the air about the Inquisition, but then gets roasted by some Templar wannabe. After conversing with his newfound best friends in Cullen and Cass, James decides that it's best to try and convince the Templars that we're chill. We then spend the next 6 weeks in the hinterlands. During those 6 weeks, James's relationship with Cass grew very much, and she finally noticed him. But then he discovered her secret about a certain dwarf author and his books. On all of their journeys, James asks both Cassandra and Cullen to train him in the way of being a Templar, since their magic would help him understand the power that he has, as well as having the added benefit of fighting demons. They then travel to confront those Templars and we want them to assimilate into the Inquisition, but there is some trickery afoot. They get transported into the Shadow Realm, which James heroically breaks out of with the help of, quote, a skinny hillbilly who appeared out of nowhere. We all defeat the Envy Demon, and with their power, we will help the demon onslaught. When finding out Cole was a demon, James killed Cole. When the party asked why, he explained that regardless of his intentions, he is an evil that could not exist in this world. I just have to take a break from reading this and give a side note that this is the most despicable thing I've ever read on this podcast.
I didn't even know this was an option. Is it an actual option?
I think so.
Okay.
Maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, this is what he did in his playthrough. We're just going to continue, and I'm going to pretend I didn't read that. So, as we know, they get attacked by Corypheus, and they escape into the mountains and found Skyhold. And that is when James, P. Inquisitor, is crowned as the King Inquisitor. And then after some more training, he masters his Templar training, and with the help of Varric, successfully wooed Cass. Varric then introduced them to Hawk, the champion of Kirkwall. There's a long pause as they stare at each other, becoming rather awkward. Hawk asks if we've ever met because I seem familiar, and James responds with, well, I've never been to Kirkwall before, so I doubt it. Hawk then says that he needs help, and because Hawk knew Corypheus, we should team up. And so they do. They travel to Crestwood in search of Hawk's warden friend. And then they travel to the desert where they liberate some camps from the rebel scum and complete required rituals and claim a fortress in the name of the Inquisition. And then they travel to another final destination, the fortress, where they kill a bunch more demons and fight through to the end. They all get flung into the Fade, and then they fight their way through to killing the Nightmare. James opens up a rift, returning to the real world, and being the hero he is, he lets all of the others cross first. But when Hawk passes him, James lets out a powerful magical attack, knocking Hawk down. Hawk rolls on his back to see James crushing a red lyrium crystal he had pulled from his pouch, absorbing its powers. I haven't felt this alive in years, James says as he stalks toward Hawk. A massive battle between James, the two-handed warrior / Templar, and Mage Hawk. The battle was bloody, but the Templar powers were too much for Hawk, leaving him defeated and broken. Hawk then asks in a distraught and harsh tone, why? I also, Shelby, am asking the question, why? James picks up Hawk and whispers in his ear, this is for my mother. Hawk then immediately realizes where he has recognized James from, as his eyes are the same eyes as Knight Commander Meredith. Is this fan fiction? This has to be fan fiction.
This is 100% fan fiction.
Ultimately, James kills Hawk in the Fade, and then he leaves the Fade, asks what happened. James explains the Nightmare Demon returned, and that both him and Hawk fought and defeated it, but it killed Hawk in the process. They then all return. And James heads to his love, Cassandra. They are now inseparable, though if Cassandra knew what James did to Hawk, I don't know if they would still be inseparable. But in this fan fiction, they are inseparable. James comes clean to her that he's been lying this whole time and that he used to be a Templar, which is why he caught on so quickly, but he was ashamed of the man he used to be. The tactic worked on Cassandra as she fully believed that James has atoned for his past life.
What's happening? It's so confusing.
James then decides that he's tired of waiting and takes the fight to Corypheus, charging him head on and single-handedly killing both Corypheus and his dragon. After the final battle, the question of who will be the next divine emerges, to which James tells everyone that his love, Cassandra, will be the next divine. Cassandra accepts and would do anything for James because she loves him. The question of what will happen to the Inquisition now that Corey is gone now begins. James arrives an hour late to the Exalted Council, and when confronted said, the Inquisition is the reason you are all here, which is why I shall not disband it. I have the full support of the Empress of Orlais as well as the current divine. The Inquisition shall remain a force in this land as a force to keep the peace among all people, to ensure nothing like this happens ever again. If anyone wishes to challenge these claims, you are welcome to come and say it to me now. The room remains silent as James leaves and returns to his throne in the mountains. End scene.
Wes, we gotta talk. But thank you so much for submitting your Herald, your Inquisitor. And yeah, I have lots of questions, but thank you so much for supporting that. Shelby, do you have thoughts, or are there too many?
I would rather not share my thoughts that I have about this fan fiction here that I have read to everyone.
All right. You got us good, Wes. You got us good. But yeah, so thank you. You too can submit actual Inquisitors and heroes and hawks to our Discord, and we will read them out on the show. So you can do that. The last thing I want to talk about is on Dragon Age Day, which is coming on December 4th. We are going to be doing a giveaway for Dragon Age Day. You can find the details on Twitter and our Discord, but we will be doing a giveaway where we will be giving away all kinds of gear from the BioWare store. I know some of the items are a Varric plushie and some coasters, some other items, and there's different giveaways. It'll be a lot of fun, but you should check it out on Twitter or on the Discord. There are lots of ways to win prizes there, so you can look forward to that on December 4th, Dragon Age Day. All right, well, that's all I got from the mid-break, so we can hop back into it.
All right, so let's get back into Merrill.
Beg that I succeed, for I have seen the throne of the gods, and it was empty.
Your glibness does you no credit.
You fear barbarians will swoop down upon you.
Yes, swooping is bad.
So let's talk about Dragon Age 2. In Act 1, when we meet her, I don't think even looks like the same person as she is in DAO. In Origins, her eyes are teal/blue, and in DA2, her eyes are green. In DAO, her Valisline covers her whole forehead, and in DA2 it does not. In DA2 her ears point outward, and in DAO her ears point upward. Her entire vibe and look is completely different between the two games, to the point that I've seen several people on the internet say that they didn't even recognize her or connect the dots that they were the same person. What do you think about Merrill's appearance?
Well, it's like many people, it's not something I realized until later, because I didn't play the Dalish Origin until after I played DA2. And I saw Merrill and I was like, wait, your name's Merrill? And then I saw Marithari and I was like, oh, this is the same clan.
So after the first appearance, when we do first meet her, we learn that she has kept a very small fragment of the eluvion that is connected to Tamlin's disappearance in Origins. She has cleansed it of the taint somehow. She has studied the lore behind the eluvion and has become obsessed with figuring it out. Marithari, the Keeper, does not approve of this at all, and the clan essentially shuns Merrill and is terrified of her. Merrill then accompanies Hawk on a ritual that takes place on top of Sundermount. This is a main quest that we see in Act 1. Merrill recites the song in Uthanera. Flemeth is then resurrected, and Merrill joins the party permanently. In Act 2, Merrill needs Hawk's help in attaining a dagger that Merrill believes will help her complete the eluvion. After asking the party to kill the dangerous Varteril, Marithari gives the dagger, also known as the Arulenholm, to Hawk instead of Merrill, which technically she should not have done. She should have given it to Merrill because it is a sacred right that any elf can claim as like a standing member of the elf in the clan. But instead, Marithari gives it to Hawk because she's afraid of what Merrill will do with it. And Marithari begs Hawk not to give it to Merrill. So Hawk then has the decision to make whether they should keep it or give it to Merrill. And then in Act 3, the eluvion is still inactive. Merrill finds yet another scheme to fix it This time it is to contact the demon Audacity, who helped her originally. Ultimately, as we know, the demon has possessed Marithari, and the party then has to kill her. And Merrill is pretty crushed by all of this. So Merrill's story in Dragon Age 2 is very much a story of trying and failing to fix the Eluvion. We don't technically see her ever fix it in Dragon Age 2.
No.
So her story is almost an arc of failure, if you will. She gets exiled by her clan. She has to move in the city elf alienage. She has to leave the life that she's known if she wants to continue working on this passion project, which is what she does. But as far as we know, as far as we see in Dragon Age 2, we actually don't ever see her complete this goal.
Yes. And no one supports her in this goal. No one. Not a single companion says, yeah, Merrill, do this. This is a good idea. Anders is like, you don't know what you're doing. You're working with forces you don't understand. Bethany is wary of it. Carver obviously has a crush on her, but he hates all things magic. Fenris, again, is Fenris and hates magic. Varric thinks it's a bad idea. Izzy thinks it's a bad idea. Aveline thinks it's a bad idea. Like, no one is really supporting her in this goal.
I do think it's hypocritical, especially of Anders, but I just feel like none of them are Dalish elves. They don't understand the significance of the Eluvion. They don't understand the meaning behind it. And so Fenris would be the only one maybe who even knows about it. But I just feel like none of them really have a right to judge Merrill in that way. They don't have a right to say, Merrill, you shouldn't do this, because they don't understand the cultural significance of it to Merrill.
Yeah. I really think that in this way, I would feel the same way, and I'd probably go against the party if it wasn't for Marithari's reaction to Merrill. And like, so much of what Marithari does and the choices that she makes is to protect Merrill from either the clan or herself. I mean, she basically does this shunning of Merrill to prevent the clan from basically demanding her head.
That's true. I just feel like, how would they even know any of it if she hadn't already told them? Marithari, I mean.
I mean, it's a close-knit. I mean, it's not a big place.
No, it's not, but I do feel like Marithari could have handled this situation better.
Probably. It kind of begs the question, and we're going to get into this later, about like, I come back to why the Eluvian? And I know that it's like a relic of Arlathon and everything like that, but she is obsessed with that more than anything elf or elven related. Why the Eluvian? What does this demon gain from the Eluvian? And this demon has a name, which is significant because there are not a lot of actual named demons in Dragon Age.
That's a good point, but I think for Merrill, it's not the significance of the demon. That's not what she's thinking about. She's thinking about the significance to her clan, because this thing has already claimed multiple lives. It's taken Tamlin's life, and it almost took the hero of Ferelden's life, and so I guess she's trying to redeem something that used to be a cultural icon for them. That's how I read it. I definitely think she has pure intentions. I don't think she's trying to do evil with it. I think she's trying to help the elven people. But I don't feel like she knows where the line is of, this is too far, or, okay, no, I need to keep pushing. She has no idea where that line is.
It's a fair point.
Do you have other thoughts about Dragon Age 2?
No, I do have one. Sorry. Yes, I do have one more thought. And it's about the demon's name. And I think it's significant to what BioWare is trying to tell us about Merrill's character, that it is a pride demon that tempts her, and not even a pride demon named Audacity. And I think it does come into Merrill a little bit of, she wears the weight of all of this on her shoulders, that she has to do this. And it is kind of comes across as prideful, or that she has the audacity to think that she's the only one who can recover this, that she's the only one who's going to save and restore the elven people.
Yes, which we'll get into more of this a little bit later in the episode. But in this way, I think that she and Solas have very similar goals.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk about Inquisition a little bit. As we know, Merrill doesn't necessarily appear in Inquisition, but she is mentioned. And we do have a few things to talk about. So the Inquisitor can ask Varric about Merrill's fate. If she survived and was not romanced, she stayed in Kirkwall to look after the city elves who were left homeless after the chaos in Kirkwall. She protected them from more fighting between the mages and Templars. If Merrill was romanced, Hawke will say that they didn't want to take her away from this work with the city elves and her clan. And then in the Fade, the Nightmare will threaten Merrill. If Hawke is left behind in the Fade, they then apologize to Merrill before charging at the demon. And then the last and most interesting place we see Merrill in Inquisition is not a place where we actually see Merrill, but when we travel in the crossroads with Morrigan, Merrill's eluvion can be seen in the distance.
I was just going to say, it's very interesting because Merrill's eluvion retains the same shape and form as it does in DA2, whereas the eluvians in DAI take a different shape. So I think it's really intentional that BioWare in design is showing us this is Merrill's eluvion.
Yes. So I have some quotes I want to read, and then I have a discussion question for us. You know, I love to do that. So I gathered these quotes because I think they're fascinating. So I'll read them all out back to back. Guarding a clan from the Dreadwolf is a keeper's place. Your maker is a story you humans use to explain the world. We have our own stories. I don't need to borrow yours. Spirits differ from each other, just as you and Hawke and Isabella are all human, more or less. Magic can't be made safe, and it can't be destroyed. Fear makes men more dangerous than magic ever could. And being a blood mage does not mean sacrificing innocence.
All kind of good quotes and showing like how she views the world. I think it could be interpreted of her like just trying to make excuses and justify her own actions, but I think that would be a very shallow reading of her behavior and her words. The one that I think that really stands out to me is guarding the clan from the Dreadwolf is a keeper's place, which I think is a good segue into our very last discussion for the episode.
Yes. So my discussion question is, does the presence of Merrill's eluvion in the crossroads suggest that she is already allied with Solas? Do you think this fits her character? Why or why not? I'll let you go first.
I do think it fits her character. I do think that if Merrill appears in DAD at all, it will be as an agent of Fen'Harel. I also have a theory that it is Merrill who wakes Fen'Harel and wakes up Solas. That it is her meddling and her movement with the Pride Demon and the Eluvion that actually wakes Solas. And so I think that the timeline matches up because Act 3, and we can place the DLC wherever you really want. I like to think that Hawke kind of does it sometime in between Act 2 and 3. And so we have the Mark of the Assassin, or not the Mark of the Assassin, the Legacy DLC with Corypheus. Merrill does all of her stuff with the Eluvian in Act 3. Boom. These two entities have been awoken at the same time to come together and devise their plan. And perhaps, maybe, it is Finn Harrell whispering and moving that gives Anders his presence for, the bomb to blow up the Chantry. Maybe Solas is behind it all ever since the Kirkwall incident.
That's really interesting. I don't think it's impossible. That's for sure. To me, and I'll say this before I answer the question, but the quote, guarding a clan from the Dreadwolf is a keeper's place, very much reminds me of our conversations that DAD could be a story of the Dreadwolf as a title applied to someone other than Solas. That Solas maybe has transcended the title or done something to revoke the title or done something to have the title being taken away. Because I do think that the presence of Merrill's eluvion does suggest she's already allied with Solas. And I completely think this fits her character, because she's all for wanting to take care of the elves, but also wanting to restore the glory of the Elven Empire. And those are also Solas's goals. I think Merrill would be a little bit more charitable toward humans and other people in Thedas than Solas is. But I do think their goals align very closely. And I very much agree with what you're saying about the name of the pride demon, Audacity. Solas is also very associated with pride demons. I don't think that's a mistake. I don't think that's an accident. And I don't think it's a coincidence. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, 100%. There has got to be some pattern, and I don't know if we'll get that in DAD or we'll get that in maybe she's going to make a casual appearance in Absolution. Maybe there's going to be something in one of the upcoming comics, but I think that she is linked to Ben Harrell. But I could be wrong,
Yeah, we could easily be wrong, but I think she'd be more likely to make an appearance in The Missing, the upcoming comic in January, than in Absolution.
I tend to agree with that.
All right, so let's get into our last topic for this episode. Why do you love or hate this character?
So Merrill was my first ever romance. She's not my canon romance, but she was my first one. And when I was younger and playing DA2 for the first time, I liked Merrill's, in a sense that she had this kind of wide-eyed view of the world that I thought was cute. And so I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate that Merrill, in a world that over and over again proves to her that it's bad and evil, she never really kind of loses hope that everything has to be bad and evil. And I appreciate that about her.
I definitely agree with that. I think I have said this before about Merrill, about many other characters, but I do feel like Merrill is a person in Dragon Age who just needs a friend, who needs a person who believes in them, who needs a friend, an unconditional friend who doesn't necessarily have an agenda to convert them or make them think or believe a certain way. Merrill is just a person who needs a friend, and I think she does get that in some of the companions, especially Isabella and Varric. But I think she needs it from Hawk too. And so I surprisingly enjoyed her romance. I did not think it was terrible. But at the end of it, I just felt like this would have been better as a friendship more than a romance. So I don't dislike Merrill at all. But I do feel like she just needs a friend.
She does. And I think that, to echo kind of what you said, I really do love her relationship with Isabella and the kind of sisterly role that Isabella takes with Merrill, and that Isabella never wants to take away Merrill's view of the world or her optimism. Isabella is just kind of there to make sure that she doesn't die.
Right.
So yeah, but I think she's a good character. I think that there's potential for more of her because, like you said, we don't really know a lot about her outside of the games.
As character deep dives go, this one was very short, and I honestly wasn't expecting that since she is in Origins too. But Yeah, no, I mean, we really don't know a lot of the lore behind Merrill.
No, Mary Kirby, you should just come and hang out with us and tell us all about Merrill and her inspiration.
That'd be awesome.
All right. Well, do you have anything else?
I do not.
All right. Well, before we go, I just want to give our last special thank you to our Nug King, Lewis H. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you all for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. We will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. You can find us on Twitter at DA Lorecast.
If you have any lore questions, topics to unpack, or side character suggestions, join our Cups Podcasting and More Discord server. It's easily the best place on the internet. You can also support us financially through our Patreon. You can find us there on patreon.com/DragonAgeLorecast.
The Dragon Age Lorecast is part of the Robots Radio Network. For more information about the Robots Radio Network, join the Discord server via the link in our episode description.
If you enjoyed the show or learned something new today, please subscribe, leave us a review, and join the Patreon. And if you enjoyed our intro and outro music, give a big thank you to Pipeman Studios. Thank you, Pipeman. Thanks again for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. We'll see you next time.
How well do you know your video game lovers?
Have you ever wondered how your video game bays stack up against all the other delectable digital dates?
I'm Genesis, the girl whose motto in life is love, laugh, tequila. And on Two Girls, One Ship, we analyze, rate, and review all that the world of video game romances has to offer.
And I'm Vervada, the hopeless romantic cat lady and lifelong gamer.
But you should know that our podcast centers on character and romance analysis and doesn't shy away from exploring the fun of physical connection.
Or from the deep emotional connections built between two characters, using specific in-game dialogue and the overall narrative journey. So join the Two Girls, One Ship shipsters, and remember,
beauty is in the eye of the controller.